And you look for the attributes of what is money? What does money have to be? And the very first thing is a store of value. And after that, they go medium of exchange, unit of account, and all these other things, fungible, indivisible, and all that other stuff. And so I came up with a couple of questions that you can ask somebody. If somebody is insisting, no, you're wrong, the euro is money. No, you're wrong, the dollar is money. Ask them, does money have to be a store of value? Is that one of its attributes? And if they say yes, ask them, is there inflation? And if they say yes, then ask them, aren't those two things mutually exclusive? If there is inflation, it is not storing value. And national fiat currencies, all of them on this planet now, are borrowed into existence and they're owed back plus interest. But the currency to pay the interest doesn't exist yet. It wasn't borrowed into existence. When it is borrowed into existence, you owe interest on that. So if you start off with $1, and you're going to owe that plus $1 worth of interest, and then you borrow the second dollar to pay that interest eventually. Now there's $2 in existence. One is disappearing into the debt payment, but now you've got $4. There's $2 of interest and $2 of debt, and $1 is vanishing to pay off the principal on the first loan. Whenever you borrow currency into existence, whether it's from a bank or whether it's the central bank doing it, the currency appears as a double entry bookkeeping thing. There's a debt and a credit and these two things. When you make payments, you're extinguishing the debt that is owed on that balance sheet with the currency that you save up. And so the principal vanishes, but the interest is still owed. And so in our society, there are constantly more loans being made than there are paid. And so if you're talking about M2 currency supply, you're talking about 90% bank credit. And so you go out and find a house that you want to buy. You need $1 million loan. The bank says, okay, here's the loan document you have to agree to. They just check you out and see if they think you can repay it. And if they think so, then here's the loan document. Your signature hits that paper. They imagine $1 million into existence. We're going to loan you $1 million on that house. They imagine that into existence, type it into your checking account, and at the same time, there is a debt owed to the bank on that loan. And so this brand new imagined currency just appears, and when you make the payments on the principal, it vanishes. However, you then have to save up some of the existing pool of currency that is always being borrowed into existence and pay the interest, which is the bank's profit and pays all of the employees, it pays for the building and everything else, and it goes out and it circulates. But the point is, those dollars that you're paying with, they were borrowed into existence. They're somebody else's principal that was borrowed into existence just in the currency pool. The more you dig into the monetary system, the more you figure out that this is just such an illusion. It is just, it's amazing. And it's really important right now for everybody to start learning this stuff, because we're about to go through some enormous changes in just the next few years. This decade is going to see some upheavals in the monetary system. I do believe that gold and silver are going to be the big winners in all of this. There's two forms of base currency. The first is the paper notes that are in your wallet, and that is an IOU from the Federal Reserve if you live in the United States, the ECB if you're in Europe, Bank of England if you're in England. So the paper notes are one form of base currency, and they used to be the vast majority of base currency. But then with quantitative easing, Ben Bernanke, because of the mechanics of the way quantitative easing works, base currency sort of gets trapped in this second form of the base currency, which is bank reserves. Bank reserves are a dollar that the public never sees, touches, or interacts with. It is something that is only used for interbank settlement and interbank loans. So they're borrowing and lending to one another. And then if I pay you and I write a check to you and you go and cash that check, your bank is going to contact my bank and tell them that you've got a check from me, and they'll make $1,000 worth of the imagined bank credit currency digits, these dollars that are just digits, which the Bank of England actually states these digits are reminders that the bank owes you an IOU. They aren't even an IOU. The bank owes you the paper note IOUs, the base currency IOUs. So there's about $2 trillion worth of base currency IOUs that we use in circulation, paper notes. The banks use that for just interbank settlement. The vast majority of the currency supply, about 90% of M2, is bank credit currency. So these are, like I said, digits in your bank account that remind the bank that it owes you that many central bank IOUs. Today's fiat currency is a trade of nothing for something, which is a fraud. And, they're inventing digits that are reminders to pay IOUs. And when they do, it dilutes the IOU supply that is out there, the M2 IOU supply, and thereby steals purchasing power from all the existing units of currency. We saw that in the stock market with QE and the inflation. They don't measure. There's something I came up with a long time ago called CUP inflation, CUPP, currency units per person, and nothing else really matters. In the long run, if the CPI also included the stock market, real estate, and so on, then they would get an accurate measure of inflation that reflected the growth of the currency supply. Because there is one truth, every dollar created has to go somewhere. If people can if they can discern the difference between currency and money, it makes a huge difference in your life. And it shows you how you are being robbed by the system. The system benefits the few at the expense of the many. When they do QE, because of the mechanism of QE, they can only make their asset purchases through their primary dealers, which are these big brokerage houses and such. And when they do that, it means that they are funneling currency directly into the stock markets, the primary dealers can buy either directly from the Treasury or they can buy from the open market. And so the Fed wants some bonds or they want some mortgage-backed securities, and they go out there and they make a purchase, and if it happens to be from a pension fund or something, a pension fund may decide to replace that bond that was just purchased with stocks. The correlation between the rise, from QE 1, 2, and 3, if the base currency increased by 10%, the stock market would go up 10%. If it increased by 20%, the stock market would go up by 20%. The correlations are astounding. And so when you do that, when you dilute the currency supply and spend that new currency into one area, one sector, that area becomes warped, but it's robbing from the other area as it does it. This is what kept all of the groceries and gasoline and stuff down for so many years. They were having trouble creating that inflation because the mechanics of the way they create inflation is to inflate the stock market, and that's it.